Hello everyone, I'm Tim from Tim's PC and I build custom PCs to suit anyone's needs or budget. Also live stream my builds and repairs for transparency and educational purposes. So if you'd like to get an awesome new PC and you'd like to see it get put together live, send me a message today. Alrighty, so we're back here on a Saturday night. I had last night off where I just bummed around and actually played a little bit of retro games last night. Look at me, look out, Tim's enjoying himself. What's going on here? How dare he enjoy himself? He's got to just do PCs. It's got to be like real life PC building simulator all the time. No. Sometimes I do have a night off. So yes. So a little bit of as Christine said. Hey Richard, how you going? Good to have you with us. Fluffy Mao is just off camera at the moment because there's a gecko on the window. It's very important. He's decided to spend a bit of time over there next to the window.
Did it jump?
Or did it jump? Oh, he's onto it. He's just trying to work out. It's on the other side of the glass, so he's just trying to work out if he claws at it like really fast and on a certain angle, will his paw go through the glass and he get the gecko. He's just trying to work that out. He's not sure which angle he has to hit it with, but he's pretty sure he can get it. The cats don't understand physics very well. They're like dogs. Dogs can be a bit silly sometimes, but cats. Cats are next level. He chases a red dot around the room. Like you could just do that and he'll.
George says, "Hey guys, is Fluffy up to shenanigans?"
Yes, the usual fluffy mouse stuff that he does. He'll come over here and start trying to get some food off me soon, so you'll get to see him eventually. Alright, so tonight we're going to be building another RX 6700 build. It's very similar to the one from the other night. And this one is for one of my friend's kids. So I don't know the young fella's name, but this is going to be his build. So he actually got a free upgrade because he was going to be getting a 3060, but we managed to get him the RX 6700 because it was like the same price and a better graphics card. So you can't really say no to that. It was pretty much a no-brainer. So I just picked up the other one. Hopefully the young fella doesn't mind too much, but I'm sure all that he's concerned about is how well it runs games, and this will run games better than the 3060 in the original quote. So, what have we got? We have one main difference from the other night, and that is the CPU. So if you're a real nerd with performance, you can compare the Ryzen 5600 and the Ryzen 3600, running the same benchmarks with the exact same graphics card, same motherboard, same RAM. Oh, actually, this time I think we've got bit more RAM than we did last time, is that right? No, I think we still had 32, didn't we? When we last did this build?
I think so. Pretty sure.
Got me second guessing now. Anyway, so basically it's the exact same thing as the other night, but with the RX, not the RX, with the Ryzen 5600 CPU. So you can see how much of a difference this makes with this build configuration. 3600, I should say. Fuck. You can tell this is live and unscripted, right? The 5600 and the 3600. So two Ryzen 5 chips a generation apart. Same graphics card, same rest of the setup. So it's basically not going to make any difference with the setup that we've got. You might start noticing more of a difference with a more powerful graphics card, but at this level, it's not going to make too much of a difference. So Ryzen 5 5600 6-core 12-thread CPU. We got the MSI B550M Pro VDH Wi-Fi motherboard. We have a 32GB kit of Silicon Power RAM, a 1TB NVMe SSD. There's a Team Group MP33 SSD. So these ones here, they got the 5-year warranty on them now. We've got the Sapphire RX 6700 10GB graphics card. So this is the RX 6700 non-XT. We got a 750 watt power supply, and we've got a new case here. This is the Acer Noir case. Noir. What a name for a case. Noir. It's like the French. I don't fully know what that means in French though. I'm quite unconscious. I'm not having a good night. I am not having a good night. I'm quite uncultured because I'm from Australia, so I don't know. I don't really know any French. We don't have a high number of French in Australia.
Objective, having a bleak and darkly cynical quality of the kind of associated with hard-boiled crime fiction from film noir.
Noir.
Yeah, that. It's a movie.
Okay.
And it's also wine.
Yeah, I've heard of it. I've seen it on the wine. I've seen it on the wine. Okay, I'm Australian. I've seen it on the wine.
Drinks
But
for the darker hours.
drinks for the darker hours. Ooh.
It's also a French word for black.
Oh, it's French for black. Oh, okay. Well, that seems a little bit better. But why is it French? Isn't Acer a Chinese brand?
From old French. What?
So basically, this is an under $60 case with the two RGB fans pre-installed. So, we'll have a look at this. We could put in another fan or two for some extra airflow. I'm not sure if we're really going to need it, but I might put one extra one on here.
Luigi was saying, is the new CPU from AMD run with 3D worth it?
The 3DX, the new 7950 3DX. Well, it depends. Do you have a 4090 or something like that to pair with it? Because if you've got a slower graphics card, it's not going to make much difference. All right. So on the tier of importance in terms of your gaming performance, CPU is like on the middle tier. Okay, it's important. You need to have a decent CPU, but it's not as important as the graphics card. As I explain to people in really, really, really simple terms to understand the role of the CPU, you have a graphics card and it's rendering frames. That's what it does. It's a frame rendering machine, basically. Not exactly. It can do other things. But when you're using it for gaming, this is what it's doing. Okay? Now, the CPU, its job is to process the information in real time as it's coming through. So basically, your CPU, it just has to keep up with your graphics card. As long as it keeps up with your graphics card, it's fine. You're not going to get heaps more performance out of your CPU. In fact, if you scroll back, if you've watched my builds and you've watched the benchmarks on them, you'll notice that when we've got a really powerful CPU, when we run the benchmarks, you'll take notice of that percentage utilization. It's right down. Okay, so it's only when we're running the absolute best graphics card, the absolute best processor, that's making a bit of a tangible difference. And it's not a great deal. It's usually only like 5% or so compared to something quite a bit cheaper. And we got some private number calling me. So yeah, I don't pick up phone calls while I'm live, but that's kind of interesting. Yeah. Hey Pete, how you going? So yeah, basically, I don't recommend it for ordinary people. Like if you're looking at this going, oh, I better get that new CPU. That'll make all the difference. But I'm just gonna get myself a 3070. I think I'll just get the 3070 and the $1,000 gaming CPU. It's like, oh, dude, no, no. That CPU, you think it's more important than what it is, okay? That's important for people who are going, fuck yeah, I'm getting the 4090. Yeah, I'm dropping 3 grand on my graphics card. Hell yeah, I would not think of doing anything other than that. That sort of person, that's who the CPU is aimed at. It's aimed for that person who wants absolutely the best of everything and wants absolutely every last frame that they can get. Fuck the costs. Fuck the price of performance. All that's out the window. I just want the absolute very best I can get, and I do not care what it costs. That's who it's aimed at. That's why it's so expensive. It's not so expensive because it like adds that much more value to your gaming or anything like that. So, as a general rule, you get a Ryzen 5 or an i5 from a modern generation CPU, and you put that with a graphics card, even a high-end graphics card, and any minor bottlenecking from the CPU, it's still less than the difference between the 4090 and the 4080, for example. So even if there's like a 1 or 2% of CPU bottlenecking, that's still way better than dropping down to the 4080 and going with a faster CPU to get that extra 2%. Because that 2%, that's 2% of where the 4090 is hitting. So it's going to be, yeah, if that makes sense, if you try and visualize how much extra performance that actually is, how many extra frames. So, like I say to people, people talk about bottlenecking, and I sort of go, who cares? Because while it is a bit of a deal when you've got a really old computer and you chuck in a new graphics card, then the CPU and the RAM could potentially be bottlenecking your graphics card, and then you lose 30-40% of the performance of your graphics card. Then yeah, then it really matters, right? But when we're talking just a little bit of bottlenecking, like 1%, that doesn't matter. You won't even notice that. And do you want to spend double on a CPU to get that last 1-2%? Do you really care? By the time you get into 4080 and everything's running at like 200-300 frames a second and shit like that, does it really matter? Is those extra frames, that extra 2%? I'd say no. And basically, for it to make sense to drop down a graphics card, it basically never makes sense to drop down a graphics card. It might make sense to upgrade the CPU slightly, but there's limited... Once you get to a certain point with CPUs, there's limited extra performance to get by spending more at that stage. And the sweet spot, and this is why you see so many gaming PCs with just a Ryzen 5 or an i5, because when you pair a modern chip with a modern graphics card, that i5, that's the price performance level. After that, you start paying for more cores and a slightly higher clock speed to get like a few extra frames or a few extra percentage performance out of it. So just to give you a bit of a lowdown on what all that's about, what these like high end gaming focused CPUs like the Intel KS series, like that's what this is about. So I would say for 99% of people it really doesn't matter. And don't ever cut back your spending on graphics card for your new computer for the sake of getting some better CPU. Unless you're using it for editing or something like that, you're doing more than gaming on it, then it might make sense to spend more. But it never makes sense to sacrifice the spec of your graphics card to get a slightly better CPU or the higher number, like Ryzen 7 or 9 versus a 5. It's never like money well spent when you have to drop back your graphics card to the one below, because you'll never be getting that much more performance from the CPU versus the Ryzen 5 or the i5. So if you were wondering what the deal is with all that sort of stuff, hopefully that kind of gives you a good sort of basic understanding of the rationale behind it. Because, you know, you can hear it from me, or you can hear it from the marketing and sales team from Intel and AMD, and they're going to tell you one thing, right? You need this CPU, right? Now, it doesn't matter if you actually need it. They don't give a fuck about that. I know, I just looked up and saw that.
I'm so glad Buddy doesn't do that.
Yeah. Is that a freaking secret lab chair as well? It looks exactly like yours.
No, it's not.
How do you know?
It's branding on it.
Yeah, but Secret Lab do all sorts of different brand chairs. Special editions and everything. Anyway, alrighty. So we've got our Ryzen, what do they call them? The Wraith Stealth Cooler. So that's the technical name of it. And I'll show you this up close. I always skip over this, but I guess it's kind of interesting if you don't actually do this every day. So whenever I stash the cable away, you'll see that they sort of give you this bit there for you to sort of route the cable around there discreetly. And so this will sit like this. Oh, I've gone the wrong way. This will sit like this on the motherboard with that towards the MOSFET VRM. And so we can just hook this, around like that. And then that will plug in to the power cable. So they give you a bit of room here to sort of stash it away. And I always recommend you utilise that space instead of having it sticking out.
If it wants to.
Sometimes you got to like pull it.
Well, it's gonna.
Sort of pull it out a little bit there. And then once it's run like that, you'll barely see this cable that comes out. So it's easier, it is easier to do when you don't have the cooler on there. You can also, there are other ways of doing the cable as well, but I think that trick that I'm showing you there is the best. So we have to remove the standard mounting arms here.
Oh, it's their own.
It's their own company. Yeah.
It's got a leg rest that comes in. I want that.
Of course you do. So there's always pre-applied thermal compound on our AMD stock coolers. Yep.
Right, so Coco wants to know hello. Is it good to upgrade from Ryzen 7 2700 to Ryzen 5 5600?
Yeah, you'll get an improvement there. it's not going to be it's not going to be huge, but that's what I was saying about like modern CPUs. As long as you've got a modern CPU, there's limited amounts between them, or diminished return on your investment. But Ryzen 2000 is basically just a refresh of their original architecture, basically, and it's not on the same scale as Zen 3 or the 5000 series. Yeah.
Is it worth getting a 360 AIO for an i5 13600K?
Whatever fits your case, really. 13600K can run fine with a 240mm cooler. I've got a 13600KF in my personal rig, and I've just got a 240 on it. That's completely fine. I would just, whatever case you're going for, whatever the capacity up top for a cooler is, I'd go with that capacity, and I'd mount my radiator to the top. Why I like that is I'm just a bit of a thermodynamics nerd, and heat rises. Real basic stuff here, right? And heat naturally goes up the top, and if you have the radiator for the CPU up top, all of the heat from the CPU and from in the case is just being vented out the top of the case, and then you've got nice cool air coming in the front and heat being pushed out the back and the top. So that to me is perfect. That's the way you want to configure it. If you have it on the front, it's less than ideal because you have the heat from the radiator is being sucked into your case. So it'll mean the system runs a little bit hotter. But like I said, if you put it up top, you don't have that concern. All right. So yeah, if you have a look, go if you're on your 2700 PC now, go and type in, do a Google search for valid.x86, and you should come up to the CPU-Z benchmark page. That should come up for you, and have a look at the single core performance between 5600 and 2700, and compare the multi-core performance as well, and you'll see sort of how those two CPUs stack up against each other. The single core performance is basically like your gaming performance, and the other one, your multi-core, that's like if you were using all cores and all threads at the same time, like doing Cinebench rendering a video on the CPU or something like that. So I need some scissors.
Is it raining?
Okay, here's our memory. 1 and 2. Very good. So our motherboard's all prepped and ready to go. So let's turn our attention to the case. So like I said, I think we'll install. I think airflow wise, we're going to be we're going to be okay. Now I do have this big black 140mm fan. I don't really have any other use for it, so I might install it here as an extra exhaust fan just to make sure that heat is definitely being pushed out of the case at the top there. It'll draw in extra cool from the front. You can only see this bottom fan anyway, so yeah. So yeah, you'd be pushing heat out, so you'd have it in the exhaust position. That's kind of that's sort of the objective with that, because you don't want to be sort of working against physics, right? You know, heat rises, so don't try and reverse that, because you know, technically you're spending more energy trying to do that. What you really want is your fans working like 100% towards the goal of good airflow through your case and keeping everything at a good temperature. Hey John, how you going? Good to have you with us. I think I've gotten my shit together after fumbling my words so much at the start there.
Corey says awesome, thank you for the advice, much appreciated.
No worries, man. Make these conversations interesting. What's up? No, that's all good. All good. Hopefully I think that's with regards to the CPU. Whether the 7950 X3D is worth it. And like, you know, it might be. But it probably isn't the first place that I'd be spending my money. If I was on any kind of a budget, I would be getting enough CPU, and that'd be pretty much it. I'd be like, yep, I've got enough CPU. All of the rest of my money is going on storage, so I can actually download the games, all the games that I want to play, and my graphics card, because that's the main thing that's going to get me gaming performance. Also resale value. Everyone forgets about the fact that they're going to sell their PC at some stage. And if you're in that situation and you're looking for a used PC, you're looking for those systems that have a better spec graphics card from back in the day, and you'll pay more for them, and it'll sell quicker. You'll deal with less douchebags, essentially. Okay, what do we got? What have we got? Addressable RGB, USB 2, front panel audio, USB 3 addressables. Alrighty. So we got a little bag of bolts, and oh look, we've got a post beep speaker. I'm just going to leave all that stuff in the drawer there. Yeah. Yeah, no worries. It's one of those things that, you know, can really confuse people as to what they should prioritize and stuff like that. And you know, the companies making the products, you know, they hate just, you know, straight up honest advice about things like that. They hate that. They wanna make you buy as much stuff as possible. And I mean that's their job. If I was a sales manager for a multinational corporation, and if I was as a sales manager for one of those companies, I would also be telling gamers that they need this CPU and stuff like that. But the fact of the matter is, you would not prioritize getting that CPU as much as you would upgrading from the 4070 to the 4080 or the 4080 to the 4090. And so that's fine. Like, if you want it, it's your rig, your way. I'm always happy to build people whatever rig that they want. It's their money and stuff like that. I mean, if people don't want my advice, I don't want to force it down their throats, right? That's the good thing about living in a free society, right? Where, we can say what we want until it actually starts to hurt people in a demonstrable way. And that's pretty cool. We should defend that. Can't have legal hate speech, but yeah. Oh, Fluffy Mao, he's going to be mesmerised by that gecko all night.
Yeah. It's just sitting on the arm of my chair, staring at the glass, licking his tail. He doesn't do that like cats normally do. He just stares and flicks his tail. Doesn't make a sound.
No. He makes fluffy meow noises though.
When he wants food.
Yeah. Mainly when he wants food. Okay. So one thing in this case, we've got a micro ATX case with a micro ATX board, and we've got a fan up top. So I'll make sure that I feed through my CPU power cable, because that's going to be a bit of a pain. We'll put on our rear I/O shield, and then we need a couple of offsets. Yeah. Yep. They're very, very silly. Okay. So nice and simple here. He's learning.
You used to be like that. I'm happy with my business. I love fucking now.
Ah, yes. Yes.
Yeah, Fluffy Mao.
So if you don't know the story of Fluffy Mao turned up at our apartment, and he started turning up all the time, and then even though we ended up thinking, because he'd come around like every night, and we ended up thinking that he was a stray or had been abandoned or someone moved out of the complex. He had matted fur and he was like emaciated and stuff like that, probably from worms and stuff like that. And so we were like, oh shit, we better take him in. Took him in and, you know, got him wormed, shaved him down, got rid of the mats in his fur, bathed him, and then just started feeding him and keeping him inside. And we just left him inside, and he didn't like it a couple of times, but we were just like, mate, you just need to stay inside and be a fluffy meow, and most of your problems will go away. You get matted fur because you go out and hang around in the bush.
You get full of prickles.
Yeah, you get prickles, and then you get mats, and then it starts pulling your fur, doesn't it? It's not very nice. And then, yeah, basically, after we took him in, someone put up a lost sign for him, and we were like, this matted fur cat that was emaciated, had worms and all that, and he's coming around to our house every night. We're like, feel kind of bad, but like, what do you do? I'm sure if I asked 100 people whether you think I should have given him back to the original owner or kept him, most people would be like, keep him. You wouldn't put him back to an owner that was neglecting him, basically. So it was like, okay. What was that?
Such a pretty cat.
So his actual name, his actual real name is Buddy, because he's a buddy. He's a buddy Meow.
His nickname's Fluffy.
But we call him Fluffy Meow because he's really fucking fluffy. Yeah. No worries, man. Have a good one. Alrighty. So I got our CPU power plugged in. What? Oh. My wife gets blood noses.
Yeah, just randomly.
Just like, she's not dying of cancer. She's like been getting these her whole life. When you first started getting them, I was like, holy shit, are you dying? Because I don't get them, so I'm just like, I was pretty alarmed. I didn't really know anything about it. I thought that if you got one, that meant you were sick.
No.
And then I met her and I'm like, oh wow, people just like get blood noses for no particular reason.
Yeah, pretty much. I just scratch rub my nose.
She just rubs her nose and she's like, oh shit, my nose is bleeding. Fuck. And it's not just like a little bit of blood.
No.
It's like a decent amount of blood. Yeah. Yeah. I met her when I was 18, so I was like, 18-year-old me was like, holy fuck, man. Why are you fucking bleeding? Are you fucking dying?
No.
That's me impersonating my own voice from freaking nearly 15 years ago.
I'll never forget the night I had one at work, and so he's like, can you serve me? Like, this Karen got really angry at me. I turn around, I'm like, I have a blood nose. Do you want me to bleed all over your deli meat? Like, I'm pretty sure you'll like that, won't you?
Blood deli.
Yeah.
Deli blood. Yeah.
This Ralph's high term is MSIM PG Z790. Other than upgrade over MSI made Z690. Unit 5 rather.
The Z790, yeah, it's a better board for sure. The thing is though, right? Like, when it comes to choosing a motherboard, it's mainly about what features it has, in terms of, you know, what actual connections does the motherboard have.
Probably saying from Queensland, Texas, the nasal region, bleeds a lot.
Yes. That was what I found out. That's what I was reading about. Yep.
Pretty annoying.
It's really strange. I just remember in a movie that someone was really sick and they had like brain cancer and they'll get blood noses or something. I don't even know if that's like a legitimate thing or it's just some movie fiction, but I just always assumed, 18-year-old me just assumed. You know when you assume?
Yeah, don't assume. Assume.
That's when you stuff things up. Hey man, how you going? Good to have you with us. Okay. So it's actually pretty simple to hook this all up here with this case. There's nothing creative required.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Move. They just want to be your friend.
Yeah, but they're doing it in the wrong way. That's what he's barking at them.
Yeah. It's just standing there at the door giving this look. As if I can make them stop doing it.
Yeah.
No, I can't, mate. They're puppies.
It's your fault.
You need to keep off Mooney. He needs to go to the vet for that.
Yes.
He wants to know how's Fluffy now. Fluffy now is good. I don't know where he's gone.
Kitchen.
Oh, yes. He's sitting between me and the kitchen looking at me going, give you some food there. No, you can wait a bit longer now.
Okay, final thing to plug in USB 3. Now everything is all hooked up to the motherboard. The only thing we haven't installed is our graphics card. Yeah, the cat gets fed bloody tuna, like human tuna.
And salmon.
And salmon.
And sometimes chicken.
Yeah, and sometimes roast chickens. You know, like winner chicken dinner, but like the cat. Yeah.
Jesse says hello. Good, wondering about the weather.
Yeah, it's a bit bloody iffy. It's a bit iffy at the moment.
Like it's raining in the catchment area out near Brighton Dam. It's not raining too much towards like, the city.
Okay. So yeah, this is a way better option than the RTX 3060. If you just care about how many frames per second it runs at and how high you can push the graphics settings, this is your card. Yeah. What's the exact cost of this build? This was like $15.50 or so. Off the top of my head. Send me a message and I'll look it up. I'll look up the exact price for you. But yeah, this is a relatively like good price performance build. You know, it's not too cheap. You know, like we got 32 gigs of RAM and you know, the 6700. But it's also not super expensive either. It's around the like most people sort of spend between 1,500 and $3,000 or so on a gaming PC in 2023, and this comes in right at the start of that, so it's like the start of the mid-range, I guess you could say. And so that might sound like a lot, but yeah, you just got to consider how much more powerful PCs are these days compared to what they were 10, 15 years ago. You know, you don't even need i7s for gaming. You used to have to get the i7 if you wanted to game. If not, there'd be like, you know, a decent drop in performance. Or you'd at least have to get the K series. But not anymore. Yeah. I'd probably steer away from the MSI coolers. It just statistically was a lot of problems with them. They have I'm assuming you're talking about the model that has has it got the pump in the radiator? That looks pretty chunky, that block, so I'm assuming the block might be the pump might be on the block. Because you got to watch some of those MSI branded coolers that they have the pump in the radiator, and while that's not necessarily a deal breaker, what is a deal breaker is when
This
you.
one's got a actual fan inside the block.
Okay, but where's the pump? Is there a photo of the radiator, like without any fans on it?
No.
Scroll down.
Oh yeah, pump embedded fan.
So pumps in the block. Yeah, so if the pump's in the block, then it's a normal AIO cooler. You can't make any mistakes with that. The mistake that people make is when the pump is in the radiator, you can't mount it to the top. So when you've got a liquid cooling loop, there's a little bit of air. Not much air, but there's a little bit of air in the loop. And what happens is that you get expansion of the liquid as it heats up. So the liquid should never get, that hot. It should only ever sort of fluctuate by, about 20 or so degrees. And at that, it barely sort of, the liquid barely expands. It expands a little bit, but we're not talking a great deal of expansion there. But when the pump is in the radiator, it's at the high point, and that pocket of air that has to stay in the loop ends up going inside the pump. Now, if you know anything about pumps, the ones that are designed to move liquid, they don't do well with air, and the pumps that are designed to move air, they don't do well with liquid. There's some fundamental engineering differences between the two sorts of pumps. And when you've got a liquid pump, it's really important that the liquid stays inside the pump and no air's getting in it. As soon as you introduce air into the pump, you're doing wear to the pump.
Yeah.
So what happens is, like, there was a heap. MSI dropped these coolers. They looked great. They were cheap, and lots of people were using them in builds. And when I say lots of people, I mean lots of people in my PC building group. So, there was probably about 300-400 PCs, I reckon, between everyone that had used these coolers. Everyone was using them. Cataclysm was using them. Radium was using them. Titan Tech was using them. Plus, everybody, all our other smaller players and stuff like that. And the problem was heaps of people mounted them to the top, just like what we do with most AIOs. You have a case with some fans in the front, and then you got a fan on the back, and then you got this empty spot here, and you put the cooler in there, you put the radiator up there. And then we had shitloads of returns of people's coolers, and shitloads of coolers to replace for people and stuff like that had failed. If they didn't fail within the warranty period, they failed really close to the end of the warranty period. So some people got screwed over by it. But I think between all the main players, we would have just replaced people's coolers with whatever, and we would have negotiated a refund for the others from the wholesaler. But that's something to be considerate of when you're buying the MSI coolers. Yeah. Oh man! Apparently, is it Burketown?
Yeah.
Is being evacuated?
Yeah,
The entire town is being evacuated. That's pretty full on.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a very granted, it's not a very big town, so
But still, there's a lot of people that
it's
losing their
it's
fucking
bloody
minds.
it's bloody flat out there though. But you'd have to have insurance living out there. Because you'd have to you couldn't live out at freaking Burketown and not hear from some old timer, oh mate, you should see it in the floods. You should see it when it floods. Fucking, we're fucked. We gotta get the fuck out of here. Okay, well, this PC is all ready to go. I'll put the glass panel down there.
Jesse also knows it's a 3060 card running 4K games, and it's got the elite gigabyte.
I mean, you can optimize it for 4K, but I personally don't recommend anyone runs it at 4K on a 3060 or any of the mid-range cards. To me, 4K is for RTX 3080 and above. It's not see, this is the thing. People get a bit whoa man, 4K. Yeah, and they don't not necessarily fully understanding what 4K is. It's not it's not better quality. It's bigger pixel dimension. Okay? So you've got the physical size of the screen, and then you got the pixel dimension. And it doesn't, you will notice less of a difference if you've got, say you went and bought the cheapest 4K monitor that you could get, and it was like, you know, say it's 27 inch or something like that. You're not gonna notice too much of a difference between 4K and 1440p. It's less because of that smaller screen size. 4K is for when you have a massive panel, either a big, long, wide panel, or on like a 4K or 8K TV with a high refresh rate. That's what 4K gaming's for like standing in front of a massive screen. That's the whole point of it. When you've got a smaller screen, you just use 1080p or 1440p. That's plenty of quality, and your card runs better because it's physically got to render less pixels per frame. So, yeah, that's one thing that people commonly like get a little bit confused, and I get it because they don't teach this sort of shit in school. They expect you to know all this crap. Yeah. Hey, how you going?
Check what's late and this is 8 and the lowest is not having a keyboard mouse and
Sorry, can you read that one again?
8 and the lowest is not having a keyboard mouse and turning Bluetooth off. I'm assuming that's to a joke.
Oh, okay. I'm confused.
Nicholas says
Hey man, how you going? Good to have you with us. Alright. Do you want to share the screen?
no.
No, it's reset. That's fine. Okay. So XMP profile 1. I'll just go and quickly configure our fans. So our CPU fan is obviously PWM. Down here, system 3. System 3 is also PWM, and we'll have that one just sort of ramping up when it has to, as the CPU starts getting a bit warmer. Okay, so we can go and reset. Let me, before I go through that, plug in a Windows installation USB. And just a little bit of tempered glass here. It's just a 2mm thick pane. So yes, don't go too nuts with it. Might be 2.5mm. So the lighting is addressable, so you can use the software that I'll install on the PC. The LED light on the case, that's just hooked up to the reset switch. Because it's normally a little bit more elegant to be able to control it with software instead of pressing the button over and over again to cycle to the mode that you want. It's good that when they include it like that, so you can do that, because then if you've got older hardware, like an older motherboard that doesn't have the addressable ports, and then you can still get addressable RGB, albeit with a press of a button. Yeah. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I mean that can happen. I mean you'll get some CPUs or some graphics cards that sort of have inadequate paste from factory. It's fairly rare though. They normally don't stuff that up. But it is a mechanized process. It's not like they got a guy out there. And yes, trust me, there's always bloody failures with mechanized processes. You can just get it down, you can't ever eliminate the failure. Yeah. I mean the CPU's a little bit weak. Ryzen 1600's definitely showing its age in 2023. But you know, 6600 XT isn't that powerful. You'll still get a decent amount of performance out of it. I wouldn't, if you've got the CPU, I wouldn't bother upgrading it if you don't have the money for anything more than just a 6600 XT. I would probably just stick with what you got for now, and then consider an upgrade at your next upgrade. Yeah, consider upgrading the CPU at your next upgrade. Or it might be time at the time when it comes to upgrade again. It might be better to sell your PC and buy a new one, so then you can start fresh, new CPU, new graphics card, everything new, and then yeah, just makes your life a little bit easier. Yeah, I mean, I've got no problems with Gigabyte. I had someone who was like, who thought that Gigabyte was a bad brand.
Like, yeah, they had a batch issue, but that's a batch issue.
Companies have batch issues, man. Asus stuffs up all the time as well.
Food companies have batch issues.
Everyone.
Stop eating something from one company because one batch was like
Yeah,
bad.
exactly. It's like oh, there was a recall on fucking Coke, and it was regular Coke, not the Coke Zero. Does that mean you go and switch over and start buying Coke Zero, or like Pepsi Max, or like something else completely different, or is that just a case of oh, there's a batch issue? Yeah, that those power supplies or whatever, there was a problem with them, and yeah, they all got sent back and replaced under warranty. Doesn't mean you have to stop buying a certain brand or anything like that. Because the three big companies, or the four big companies that produce all the graphics cards and motherboards and stuff is MSI, Asus, Gigabyte, and ASRock. And then for the graphics cards, they are the companies that make the actual graphics cards. Then the GPUs come from Radeon and Nvidia and Intel with their new graphics cards. So yeah, MSI they don't make GPUs. They only make graphics cards. They buy the GPUs from AMD, Radeon, and Nvidia. Yeah.
Is this Ryzen 5 5600X or what?
This is the 5600 and a
It says non-X version.
yeah, it's the non-X. We put the X in there if it was the X.
as well.
And it's the non-XT card. So 5600 and RX 6700. Alrighty, so we'll get some updates from Windows there. We'll also install MSI Center. I mean, I think we still get a CD with this motherboard, but we don't really use optical media anymore. I get a few customers in who are from that era, and they're like, "What do we do how do we install things we buy?" And I'm like, "I'm gonna blow your mind. For $30, you can get a USB CD drive that runs off the power over the USB cable and will read your CDs for you." And they're just like, "What?" I'm like, "You can even get a Blu-ray one if you want. It's just a little bit more expensive for the Blu-ray."
Yeah, it might be like, I don't know, $10, $15 more.
Oh no, it's like double the price.
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
yeah, yeah. They're like $80 actually. They're like way more expensive for Blu-ray. Yeah, economies of scale.
That's stupid.
It's just how it works, babe. Less people use, and yeah, there's less of them made.
I
It's
guess.
a different laser thing. It's a different type of laser beam that they use for the Blu-ray.
Yeah,
It's a blue
yeah.
laser, and the DVDs are a red laser. Yeah, see, look, I know all the old shit with the discs, the days of the discs. Anyway, do you have my SSD? Aha. We also need R23. Put down some custom desktop icons so we don't make a mess of the place. And yeah, you can make them yourself. It's just changing the folder option. You're just getting the same sort of folders that I'd set up on my own personal PC. Just because it makes sense to me for when I install software, so I don't get shit all over my desktop. I like my desktop to have things that I've got to work on, or that I am working on at the moment, so that I can see on my desktop what sort of things I need. And that's kind of how I like to work. And so as a result, I sort of set up everyone's PC the same way. You can, obviously, PC's about freedom, so you can you can use it and set it up however you want. Maybe you like having all your applications on the desktop. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's just for me. I like
If you
to.
like chaos.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's what I'd say. But for some people, that chaos is organization. Um, so yeah, I'm not gonna tell you how to do it. But if you're getting into PCs and you don't really have any opinion on that sort of stuff, yeah, maybe you can start with my template that I've been using for years. Whether I'm sitting at a desk for a company or whether I'm just at home doing my own thing, I've always set things out like this.
Now, shush. Now.
Okay, I'll keep going with this. Sorry about that. So we won't have that weird thing the other night where it stalled. Yeah. Well, the thing is with like with ninth gen Intel, they're not really very RAM speed sensitive. So you might not get a big performance increase. You would definitely get a performance increase going from 16 to 32 gigabytes, most probably in most games that you play. Yeah, yeah, that saves right there. That saves a lot of time. So basically, every time there's a new release of Windows, so up here, if you can see that, we're on version 10.22H2 or half two. So it's a big. Every 6 months there's a big Windows update. Now, the cumulative updates, they don't take as long, right? They don't take as long. They're smaller files. They're less to download, less to install. But there's a big update that comes down every 6 months, and basically, if you don't install that, then you've got multiple generations of installs that you've got to do to get it up to date. So it's one of those forgotten things. I see people with PCs from other places and stuff like that. They'll just get Windows installed with nothing else set up. It's just Windows being installed. And then when they go to update, they're back in like 2010 and they've got like 6 big updates to do. And most people won't even do that. Then they have problems, and yeah. So that's why I try to keep it up to date. Yeah.
That's a respected.
If possible, I'd go for a Crucial brand or a Samsung if you've got the money. But the thing is with Samsung, they make good quality drives, but they make you pay the price for it. They're leveraging their brand recognition on consumers. Because average consumer, they look at the brands of SSDs, they don't know any of them, but then they see Samsung and then they're like, oh, yeah, Samsung make good tech. I've got a Samsung Galaxy S, whatever they're up to now, and it's a great phone. So obviously I'm going to get the SSD, that'll be the best one. They're the most expensive, so they got to be the best ones. And it's not necessarily that simple. That's what they want you to think. That's why they've priced them more expensive than other brands, because they know they can leverage their brand recognition on consumers. So they make good drives, but very expensive, and on it might be better off to look at the Crucial branded drives. Yep. I totally generally like to keep one row of icons on the side, just one row deep. That's just me personally. It's probably about 8 icons maximum. Hey, how you going? Good to have you with us.
I didn't know you could install motherboard drivers from drivers all from MSI Center. Is it the same as if it were from the website?
Yeah, so you'll get up to date drivers from MSI Center. The website will still be the best place to get the absolute latest drivers if you're having some sort of a problem. Still go to the website, look up your motherboard, what's there under the support tab in your driver downloads. That's definitely the latest version. But in general, MSI Center's fine to do the updates. Just click on the support tab and click scan down the bottom, and you'll be pretty much set. Whatever. I don't.
Performance round says the AMD RX 6400 worth it and doesn't have decent lifespan.
Sorry, what was that? I was just doing something then.
Performance round says the AMD's RX 6400 worth and doesn't have decent lifespan.
The 6400. I don't think I've ever used a 6400. I've used a 6500 XT a couple of times, but I don't think I've ever used the 6400. I don't even think that's like.
It's probably not available here in Australia.
It might be, but it's not.
It's a little bit esoteric. I
Do they have it at Scorp Tech?
don't know.
Why don't you? BIOS Babe can check that. BIOS Babe can check out all that stuff. So we did get interrupted by that forced restart.
Computer Alliance, Sculptech, and M-Wave have it.
Comp Alliance have it. Oh yeah, they're at Brisbane.
$170.
170. Geez, that's all right.
300 at M-Wave.
300 at M-Wave.
Is that?
Or is that the 6600?
No, it's 6400 D6.
Bloody hell. Bloody hell. That's expensive.
So it is around.
It's around, okay, yeah. Interesting. No, I haven't used the 6400 yet, so I don't know. I couldn't give you an opinion on it. I know that it's got to be lower than a 6500, and I mean, I don't think I'd bother selling much lower than a 6500, because I mean, you gotta consider that you could just get a Ryzen 5 5600G and no graphics card, and then it might save you a couple of $100, and then that's a couple of $100 in the piggy bank towards buying a 6700 or a 3060 Ti or something like that. You know, like that's that extra, that's that little bit of money that you save might not be that much of a performance drop. So, you know, and if it is, you know, your performance will be down fairly low at being a 6400 because it's got to come in below the 6500 XT. So yeah, I'd definitely be thinking about that. Which way that you'd want to go? Do you get the 5600G so you've got something, you build it now, and get everything else right, put a decent power supply in, and then save a bit of money, and then just put that towards saving up to your actual graphics card, then get a really decent graphics card like what we've got here. Maybe that makes more sense than the 6400. I don't know what your situation is. So, yeah. Ha, zip disk. Oh man, zip disk. How awesome was zip disk? A disk with 120 megabytes, man. Oh, I used to think that was really cool. I never had one. I didn't have one as a kid because, like, you know, I was a kid. I couldn't just like go buy $100 plus bloody drives and stuff like that. So I'd seen a couple of friends who had tech enthusiast dads who had all of the latest stuff, and I remember just being fascinated about them, about how it's a disk, just like a floppy disk, but instead of holding like 1.44 megabytes, it holds like 100 times as much data, and it's still just a disk. I was very impressed as a kid, like young nerdy Tim, like 8 years old, just like, whoa man, that's heaps of storage. You could like have Windows on one disk. Like, I don't know if who's ever been through an installation of Windows 3.1 from floppy disk.
I think I remember that.
Insert disk 13. Kids have no idea. Nah, they were good. One thing I did have when it came out, it's not really on the computer end, it's more on the audio end, was mini disc. Who remembers mini disc? They were really cool. I thought that was going to be the future. 12, 13-year-old me was very impressed with mini discs. It's like a disc that I can record onto like a tape. And then I can have digital file names.
Mini disc.
That's not a mini disc.
Yes, it is.
It's a mini CD. It's not a mini disc. Mini discs are in a little plastic see-through case. They're roughly that size. They're actually a little bit smaller than that. But they're in a little case. That's the mini CD. It is a mini. It's just not a mini disc. Even though it's a disc and it's mini. You're alright, babe. Plenty of people would make the exact same mistake. That's a mini CD, not to be confused with the mini disc, which is an audio format, technically, not a data format. I know it's a disc. It very much is a disc. Yes. Don't worry, babe. There are so many people that would be in the same situation there. Most people don't even know what a mini disc is.
Now I don't know what life is.
Just type in mini disc, and you'll get a Google image of it, and you'll know what I'm talking about. Alrighty, yeah, so great news. Your PC can run Windows 11.
It's the same thing.
That's a mini CD.
Oh, you're talking about this?
Yes, that's a mini disc. Yes, it's technically an audio format, not a data format. I'm sure there's some nerd that can put data onto it, but like it was invented to be a replacement of like the cassette. You know, like everyone loved cassettes. I said it weird then, cassette. But cassettes, everyone used cassettes and we used to record tapes. The term mixtape comes
Yeah.
from people using cassettes so much. And basically the mini disc was designed to be a digital version of a cassette. Something that you could like get a little microphone. This is before smartphones, and then have this little tiny compact player that was shock resistant, so you could take it out, um, yeah, running or doing whatever, and it wasn't like a CD. It was the mini disc, which was a bit more robust and shockproof. Because remember trying to run with a Discman, and it would just skip. Kids these days don't know how good they've got it with Spotify on a smartphone.
What?
Okay, that's all up to date. AMD Adrenaline. Always have so many problems with this one. But we should be okay now. Should. Oops. No, we're still not okay. Yes, I'm good. He's just hanging around. He's just hanging around wanting some food. The plight of the fluffy cat. No.
No, I'm not.
No. Christine's she's not that much younger than me. But no, like
Young and I'm a 90s baby, so yeah.
you weren't. See, I don't want to toot my own horn, but I was like ahead of my time when I was 12. I was buying Pokemon cards from America and selling them at the flea markets. Remember on Sunday we used to have the flea markets at all the shops? I used to just buy them off eBay, get boxes of them shipped over here, and I'd open them all up, and I'd be happy because I could have the whole set. And then I'd just sell all the excess ones to fund my addictions, like technology, my computer, my Pokemon card collection itself. And of course, I sold all my Pokemon cards way too early. Because I'm a kid, I wanted money.
Oh, it says women in tech. Oh, I'm just kidding.
Yes, no. So when I was young and about that age, I had my own little import export thing going on. Not really export, but yeah.
Formatting fresh every 3 months.
Yes, it's
Speeds fresh.
it really makes a difference. So if you're somewhere in the world and you do this, maybe you just do this for your friends and family or something like that. Save yourself some time, and once every 6 months when you're not doing much, just go and type in media creation tool into Google and get it to update itself.
There it goes.
And now Fluffy Cat's decided to sit on the computer. Okay, that's alright. Okay, and Adrenaline still doesn't want to install.
Games today at 50 gigabyte sizes crazy. Which means I still have many discs lying around. Let's enjoy this.
Oh man. Oh man, Pokemon Game Boy. Oh, that's the ones that I don't have. I've got a GBA. I've got a DS. I've got a 3DS, and I've got a Switch, and I've got Ruby, Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald onwards. Actual game cartridges and boxes for most of them. There's a couple I don't have boxes for. It's just I think it's mainly the fucking Gen 3 ones. Let me download a fresh one. Since we're speaking of fresh downloads, let me get a fresh download of Adrenaline set up. Yeah. Handball paddles.
Yes.
Yes.
You were big on handball at my primary school. And high school. Emily wants to know why the cat likes the computer. It's because it's warm and up high.
See, normally at the top, there's like he's a fluffy cat, and then there's like airflow under him, and so it's normally just a nice breezy spot for him to sit. That's what I figure.
Yeah.
And it's up high, and it's in the middle of the room, so he sort of cats can't resist a nice vantage point where they can see everything in the room. So if it's up high, might be warm when you want it to be warm, and got a bit of airflow when you want a bit of airflow. So he just sort of likes to sit up there. That's why I pull the dust filters off and stick them on the side here, because he'll sit on top of it and get his claws into the dust filter and sort of ruin it. Yeah. Oh, this, yeah. Look, this can happen. AMD Adrenaline. I mean, it's not as robust as GeForce Experience. However, it's not like GeForce Experience is completely free from problems either. It also fails to install. Does this sort of stuff. They just don't have the budget that Nvidia does to go and refine the hell and optimize the hell. It's not that there's anything wrong with them. They still, still have driver updates just like everyone else. Yeah. Oh, I know. Just sitting around, not doing much. Oh, that's a tough one, because they pretty much trade blows with each other in terms of performance. So I would look at the benchmark. If you really want to get into it, I would look up the benchmark results for the card that you want in the games that you want to play. And you pretty much can't go wrong if you do that, because the thing is, you'll always find that in some games the graphics card will be able to produce this many frames per second. In another game it will only produce this many frames per second. And some cards run better on Radeon, and some cards run better on Nvidia. And when we're talking about two cards that like pretty much trade blows with each other, yeah, we got a recipe for a very murky decision as to which will be better. But that decision becomes less murky once you actually look it up on a game by game basis. Look at this, we're still having problems installing it. What is pending? I don't think there's anything pending. Nothing pending, but still having problems installing it. That's okay. Look, if it's gonna play around and not do what we want, we can install it later. Because we do. It's not that we don't have a graphics card driver. It's just that we might not have the most up-to-date version. But it shouldn't matter at all for what we're doing. Yeah. A 3080 Ti. Well, I mean, you can't really buy them new. You can't really buy a lot new these days. It's 30. There is still some 3080s coming through, but like I've been saying for a while, they're sort of being run out. And it's just the fact that Nvidia made so many 3080 GPUs that they've just been, companies have still got a hold of them, so they're still able to produce a little bit of stock. But you'll see that there's no new MSI or Asus or whatever cards coming down from factory. They stopped producing the GPU in July, and the board partners, Asus, MSI, Gigabyte, etc. They haven't been shipping new ones to stores for like 6 months now. So yeah. Oh, I'd have to there's that little between the two that I'd have to actually look up. I'd have to actually look up the benchmark to see which one would be better in which game. I'd say with Warzone, I'm not sure about Valorant, but I'd say with Warzone, it's probably going to be more optimized for Nvidia, just because it's a big mainstream game. You'll find that some of the more esoteric games might be better optimized for Radeon, but it's not a general rule. It's not a general rule. So, like I said, you can look up. There's plenty of people that do in-depth reviews by game, or you can just look up the benchmarks like on YouTube. Just type in RX 6700 non-XT tested in various games. Have a look at that, and then look up 3060 Ti tested in various games, and just find one that's roughly what you're planning on running, and you'll be able to roughly guess how these two different cards run in various different games. That's what I show people when they don't really know like the hardware, because most people don't know, like, graphics card to graphics card, what games are going to be best with different graphics cards. So you can't ever argue with actually seeing people run the games or have other benchmark data. Hardware Unboxed do really good in-depth reviews on all this sort of stuff, so maybe check out their channel. I'd love to. Yeah, they do all the content, and they basically make it so people like me can't make any content, because they do all the main stuff. They do all the big reviews and the big deep dives into things, and by the time they've done it, I've got nothing new to add. So, alrighty. So we'll have MSI Afterburner open as well, because it's got our on-screen display. We do definitely have the latest version of the drivers there, it looks like. Oh no, that's 2231. That looks like. I think it's the slightly older version of these drivers. Anyway, I'm not gonna lose any sleep over it. And so that number there below RAM is how many frames per second it's currently running at. Up the top here it says GPU, you got temperature, utilization, clock speed, and wattage. You should just be able to see the wattage there at the end. Then the VRAM, amount in use, and clock speeds. We've got the CPU temperature, utilization, clock speed, and wattage, and our RAM. And so as you can see, we're not even getting close to 100% utilization on our CPU. So basically, you have a bit more of a noticeable bottleneck when your CPU is sitting at like 80-90+% utilization while you're gaming. That sort of says to you that you've got a bit of a bottleneck. If it's up to 50%, that's pretty much ideal. You don't really have much of a bottleneck. Upgrading your CPU is not going to do too much. It'll do a little bit, but not like game-changing stuff. Which is what I was saying earlier in the night. You know, the graphics card is the main thing that you want to concern yourself with when it comes to buying a new computer for gaming. Because any modern CPU that you choose to go with all this, it'll keep up decently with that graphics card. You're not going to be bottlenecked. Bottlenecking, that comes into play when you've got older hardware and a new graphics card. And like I was saying, you know, it depends how bottlenecked you are. Sometimes if you've got an older PC, sometimes buying the graphics card is still the cheapest and best value way of getting extra performance, even if you are bottlenecked a little bit. It doesn't matter, it just means your graphics card's getting less usage and is being, and your CPU and your old hardware is getting more usage until you can afford to upgrade your older hardware. And it's still going to be like double your old graphics card. So you're still ahead, doesn't matter if it's bottlenecked. Because a bottleneck is a percentage thing. Things are percentage bottlenecked. It's not like bottleneck on and off has two settings, bottlenecked and not bottlenecked. It's not like that at all. It's a spectrum. And so when it's like, if it's like 1% bottlenecked, that doesn't really matter. If it's 2-3% bottlenecked, doesn't really matter. It's when it's like 20%, 30%, 40%, 50%. That's when it's like, holy shit, I've lost half the performance of my graphics card. A lot of people freak out about bottlenecking. It's one of those things that sounds really scary and it sounds like a really bad thing and something that you could easily get wrong. But if you're shopping modern CPUs, you're not going to go wrong pretty much. Like, don't go a Celeron or an Athlon or a Pentium or something like that. But if you go like an i3 or Ryzen 5 and above, you're not going to have any problems. Even a Ryzen 3, like a 3300X, is a decent CPU. It's like Intel 9th gen performance, like for the i7 and i9 when it comes to gaming. Not quite, but it's nearly there. Alrighty, and as you can see, I mean, this has been like pretty much stayed above 200 frames a second for this whole benchmark. There was a couple of dips there, but I don't think it ever got anything below 100, and it's stayed over 200 for most of this. So this is the sort of performance you can expect with 3060 Ti ballpark, at least at this benchmark. So you got to appreciate when I'm doing this, I've got to be a little bit careful what I say is better than one other thing at a certain game, because it's always a little bit different. And the other thing too is when they release updates to the games, when those updates install, can literally change the way that certain hardware responds to the game. So it can be a big deal when they send through an update. Sometimes the update's just bug fixes and nothing important, but sometimes they make a big update, and then that can make a big deal, especially if you're running older hardware. I mean, people always complain. It's like they plan all this. They plan all this, right? Eventually, your hardware that used to be good is no longer any good anymore. You're still playing the same game, but they keep updating it like Fortnite, and it keep making it more and more and more graphically demanding. And before you know it, what used to be a really good system that used to absolutely smash Fortnite is now, not looking so good. And that's the sort of thing that will happen. It's not that your hardware's gotten shitter. It's that all the games that you're running are now more demanding. So you're chasing that upgrade always. And that's why some gamers will just go, nah, fuck it, I'm spending big because I want this PC to be the last PC I buy for like the next, 5 to 7 years ideally. And I mean that's not too much to ask, right? So standard warranty on most PC parts is 3-year warranties. Some things like fans and stuff are only 12 months, but they're also cheap parts, not $1,000 graphics cards and motherboards and stuff like that. And although they only warrant it for 3 years, the average person can expect that their components in their computer last 5 to 8 years. That's reasonable. Anything over 8 years, you're kind of like you're getting every last bit of value out of your purchase by that point. It's going to be older tech, it's going to be outclassed by new PCs, but if it still works, it still does what you need, then you may as well keep using it. I'm a proponent of, people, if they've got an older system and they don't do much, it's just an ordinary computer for office and internet type things. Sometimes I'll tell them, hey, you've actually got a decent system. Like, it's an older system, it's an older motherboard and CPU and RAM, but it's actually not too bad. So instead of getting a whole new computer, why don't I put in a 1 terabyte SSD? Now your computer's going to boot up in about a quarter of the time or a fifth of the time that it used to, and everything's going to be a lot more responsive for you. But you're still going to have an old computer and it could still die. But when you do get a new one, we can take that new SSD out of it and put it onto the new computer, and all your files and everything will just get moved over to the new one. You'll have a brand new PC, and then you won't have to worry about it for another 8 to 10 years probably. Alrighty, and that was Valley there, and so you notice the lower frame rate, and that's just because it's a more demanding benchmark. Okay, so the last one we run is superposition. The last two were 1080p. This one has a 4K benchmark. Why isn't that opening for me? There we go. Okay, so 4K optimized, and so like I said, I wouldn't recommend gaming at 4K on this system, not because it can't do it, just because you won't be getting the best experience that you could be getting. You could be getting a higher and smoother frame rate. And because 4K doesn't make the graphics better quality, it's just the dimensions, the physical dimensions of the pixels. So that's what, it says 4K and it says 3840 times 2160. That's the resolution, pixel dimensions. Yeah. How many what versions? How many what versions of DDR5? Yeah, so we've got GDDR 6, what do they call it, 6X? Some people call it 7, I'm pretty sure. So you got the, yeah, that's what we're up to, I'm pretty sure. Here's a 40 series card, and yeah, GDDR6X, which I guess is GDDR7, but it's better because it's got an X, so that's cool, right? Yeah, so there's GDDR6 and there's GDDR6X. So just to confuse the hell out of consumers. They love doing that. The engineers make things easier. The marketing people make things hard. That's how it goes, unfortunately. And so yeah, this benchmark here is in 4K optimized. So this is like 4K on lowish settings. What's up? What's the next question? Sorry, I can't speak up a little bit. Yep. People upgrade every 2 years because... Yep. 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 And that's fine, and that's fine. Like, there's the economics of buying a new car every 2 to 3 years, and people think, holy shit, how can you afford to buy a car every 2 to 3 years? And the reason is because they are selling their old car to buy the new car, and they sell it at such a point that they get a decent chunk of what they spent back. And because they're an auto enthusiast, they don't care that they have to spend a bit more for their new car. All they care about is the fact they're getting a new car. And it's the same for PCs. Like I explain to people, the enthusiasts, PC and auto enthusiasts, they're the same people. It's the same motivations, it's the same concept, basically. So, alrighty, well, we've run through the benchmarks there. So as we can see, it's a pretty decent card. It's definitely a better option than the 3060. But I wouldn't use it at 4K. But as I was saying, that's the pixel dimensions of the screen. It's not the quality. The quality settings are something else. So 4K, you want 4K when you get bigger and bigger screens. So if you've got a massive screen, you definitely want to make sure that's 4K or even 8K for like a big TV with a high refresh rate. You want to make sure that it is that, and you want to game at those resolutions. Because if you've got a big screen, do you know how shit 1080p and 1440p look like on a big screen? They look absolutely terrible. So the pixels, because I said this is a pixel dimension, you run 1080 on a big screen, then you're stretching all of those pixels so it becomes more blurry, more distorted. Same with 1440, you're still stretching those pixels out over a bigger area. And that's why the resolution of screens is going to keep getting bigger. It'll go to 8K and 12K and stuff like that. And people say, oh, you don't see in that resolution. And yeah, that's kind of true, but it's also a little bit misleading as well. So they'll keep increasing the resolution that we output to because people love big screens. And the bigger we make screens, the higher resolution we need to produce a sharper image. So, okay, I feel like I've spoken a fair bit tonight. Makes for better content. I normally run out of things to say though. Alright, so 1080p, 1920 times 1080. Like I said, this is the pixel dimension, also known as a resolution, but I think if I tell people and explain it to people as a pixel dimension, they might understand what this is. Essentially, it's not like the quality of the graphics that's being rendered. It's just the physical size of the screen. Like, you know, that 1080, that's like this axis here of the screen, and the 1920, that's this axis here of the screen. Like, just follow my cursor. It's just the x-axis times y-axis. And so, depending on your motivations, knowing what I just said then might change your opinion as to whether you want to run at 4K, whether you want a 4K screen even. Because, like I said, do you really need a 4K screen if you want to just game on a monitor, like a 27 or 32-inch monitor? You might not get as much of a benefit out of 4K as what you think. So we'll set this up for a 90-minute run here. And this is going to test our CPU. And then over here, we're testing our graphics card. So monitor our temperatures here. So this can go up to 95 degrees here on our CPU. And down here on our graphics card, we've got global, which is the GPU temperature. It can go up to 83 degrees. And the hot spot there can go up to 110 degrees. And so we just let this one run for 90 minutes, and it basically just generates a lot of heat, more heat than what the average person's going to generate with their computer. So if I get a phone call or a message from this customer saying that their PC's overheating when they're just doing normal stuff, got a pretty good idea that there's something's wrong. A fan's died, the cooler's gunked up with dust or something like that, or some other problem has occurred. And so, because I work on my own, I don't have a customer support center. I've got to deal with all my own support calls and stuff like that. So I've got to try to do what I can in the install process to make sure we don't have any problems. However, no matter how hard I try, there will always be problems. So I'm sorry about that. But that's just the nature of technology. You can do all this testing and something will still die. And I'm sure if you've dealt with PCs for a while, you'll be very aware of that concept. Alrighty, well, I'll throw it over to everyone else if you've got any other final questions for me before I sign off. Now is your time to ask, because it gets a bit boring from here and I'm going to go get some dinner. €1,500 for... For what? You're so soft. Why don't you yell out? I think it's just a typo. I don't know. There you go. How's dog doing? I can see that. I can make those words out. The dogs are getting very big, and you need to start feeding them from separate bowls because they're getting too they're dogs. They bite each other over food. They don't understand. One of them tries to shovel the food out of the bowl and make like a little pile underneath him, which one of the other dogs will just be like, oh, I'm gonna steal your pile that you're making. It's just it's an absolute shit show. And they're becoming more and more aggressive. Yeah. But yes, no, the dogs are alright. Please, come and get a dog. Come and pick up a dog today. We need them gone. Alrighty, well, I think this is where we'll leave it for tonight, because this is all ready to go. Ready to just let it run through now. So, thanks everyone for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, nearly at 1,000. And I'll catch you all tomorrow in the next video. And a bit of a preview for tomorrow night. We've got one of the new Ryzen 9 7900 non-X CPUs coming up. So if you're interested and you're looking at that CPU, maybe you definitely want to make sure that you're on for tomorrow night's live stream, because we'll be putting that together. And yeah, I'm pretty excited about it. I haven't used it yet. It looks great on paper, so let's see how it actually performs. Alrighty, so I'll catch you all tomorrow in the next video.